My name is Sandie Arndt.
And when you were born?
I was born in 1943.
Where at?
I was born in Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Oh.
My dad was being shipped out for World War II, and my mom went back to see him off, and I put in a surprise appearance to him.
So then, was she coming from Crestone
Yes.
to New Jersey?
Yeah, and she came back then after I was born.
And who was your mom then?
My mom was Margaret Hutchinson, and my dad was Donald Dunn.
Oh. And he went to serve in World War II?
Yes. He was a highly decorated World War II veteran.
He came back?
Yes, he was at Normandy, and yes, he came back.
So, would you have been born in Crestone if you didn't go see your dad off?
I probably would have been, because he was being sent, like I said, he was being sent overseas. So I probably would have been born in Salida at that time. Yeah.
And so, when did you come back? You must
Well, I lived here when I was little until my mother remarried when I was about 4 years old. And then she married a Texan, and we moved to Texas. But then I was here when I was little, grew up here.
What are some of the first things that you remember?
Some of the first things I remember, well, one of the things I remember is where the Mercantile is, that hill. My grandfather used to pull me up on the sled and let me sled down the hill, and then he'd pull me back up and let me sled down again. I didn't realize how much work that was until I was an adult. And I remember going out on the sled, him pulling me on the sled and getting a Christmas tree. And I think I was about 3 years old. I remember Christmas Day, I got some little corduroy overalls, and I went running outside, and the snow was as deep as I was tall. So I remember those things, and I remember my grandparents. I stayed with my grandparents for a couple of years.
How did they get here?
My grandfather came first of all when he was quite young, and his Aunt Sarah Parker was here, and they had a store, and he was here for a while, and then he went back to Denver for a while, and that's where he met my grandmother, and he married her. He bought the store from his aunt in 1915, and he said he couldn't come back as a single man, so he married my grandmother, and they came back to Crestone, and he ran the store from 1915 until, I think, 1945, and then he was the water commissioner until he was 70 years old, and they made him retire.
Did he sell the store to the Williams?
I think he sold it to Carl Sizemore, because Bill and Gladys Sizemore ran it for a while, but I believe he sold it to Carl.
So that's the
Sizemore.
gas station store?
Well, his store was on the corner of, what is it, Galena, where the
Yeah, Galena and Alder.
yeah. But I guess, I don't know that he sold the building to Carl, and then Carl had it at the gas station after that.
I'm still learning all this, but I thought that became the post office.
It did,
And
but
that
it
the
wasn't
William-
originally.
Okay, and that the Williams
Margaret
ran-
Williams, yes.
ran the post office?
That's Johnny Hayes' mother.
Okay.
But the post office used to be up where Johnny Hayes is. When I was little, we would walk up and get the mail up there.
Oh, okay.
So
In the same place he is now?
in that same area, I think. Yeah, I don't remember. I was too little to remember what building. I just remember walking with my great-grandmother, walking up to get the mail up here. That was a big thing for us to do.
And you said you left when you were 4?
Yeah, when I was about 4.
And then did you come back and visit?
Oh yeah, we came back off and on, came back to see my grandparents. And then in 1989, I came back to move here. Because I came back to help my aunt and uncle, and then I've been here ever since.
And your aunt and uncle was Billy and Lee
Hutchison. Yeah.
And so do you have memories of when you would come back and visit
Yeah.
throughout those years?
Oh, sure.
And did you start seeing the changes while you were gone and coming back and visit? So it'd be
Yeah.
like different when you would come back, or?
There weren't that many changes until in the 70s when they sold the Baca Grant opened up and they started selling land to everybody. Until then, there were a few people that came up and summered here, but mostly it was just a little sleepy village, and they didn't even have electricity here until the 1950s.
1950s is
Yeah.
when it came out?
And I remember we had gas lights in the house, and my grandmother had a Ringer washing machine that had a gas engine on it. We'd set it out on the porch and do the laundry, and she cooked on a wood stove, and that we heated our irons on the wood stove, and as a child I would iron with her. Yeah, I can remember all that, but it stayed basically the same until when the Baca started developing, selling lots and that type of thing. It didn't change a whole lot until then, and then it really changed.
When you left and you would come back and visit, would you just fall right back in with the old timers?
Oh yeah, we loved it. Of course, my mother, knew most of the people here. My grandparents were well known all over the valley, and so I grew up knowing the people, and people in the valley knew me because my grandfather took me with him when he was the water commissioner. He took me all over the valley. And people, when I came back, they'd say, "Do you remember me?" And I'm going, "I was 4 years old. I don't remember you."
Who were some of your favorite people to see when you would come back and visit?
Well, one of the ones was Miss Pansy. She had the little house down here on the creek, and she told me when I fell out of the car in front of on the corner of Galena and where the big store used to be, and it was just a gravel road then, and I got gravel rash. And she asked me at my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary, she said, "Sandie, do you remember what you said to me when you were little?" And I said, "No, but I'm sure you're going to tell me." She said, "Yeah, you said, I asked you if it hurt you, and you said, 'Oh, hell no, it just damn near killed me.'" My uncles thought it was great fun to teach me to cuss, and then my grandmother would have a fit when I come in and say the things that they said to me. They thought it was hilarious.
Miss Pansy?
Yeah.
And who was she?
I always knew her as Miss Pansy. I have a picture of her somewhere.
Which house was it?
The one just right on the creek, on this side, just right on the creek.
On the north side of the creek?
I can't remember. I'd have to go out there and look and see which is on the north side. It's the one that's got the flags on it now. Okay. That was her house.
And when I first came to you and started talking to you about wanting to work on this project, you seemed really supportive and excited.
Oh yeah, I was, because a lot of this history is going to disappear. I have stuff that I'm wondering what I'm going to do with, because it would just probably get thrown out if I hadn't salvaged most of it. When my mother passed away, it would have already been gone. But I tried to save everything I could, and so if I can donate it so it gets saved, why, that's what I'd like to do with it.
And when it comes to stories, what are some of the most important things that you want to pass on?
Well, I have a lot of pictures. Pictures, like I have pictures of what they called the 100-year flood here in Crestone, and some of the old pictures. I have a picture of my mom standing out on the main road here, because the house that my grandparents bought was down at the big house down there. And she was standing there. She was 9 years old. It was the day after Thanksgiving, and they had had this huge big snow, and she told me that that year they iced down the hill where the mercantile is, and the town bobsledded on that hill until Easter.
Wow.
That's how cold it was.
Wow.
So they used to have a lot more snow in the winters, and even when we would come back in the summertime, if it was 75 degrees here, it would be a heat wave. So I remember being much cooler, and the winters much more severe than they are now.
And a lot of people have been saying that it was a lot wetter.
Yes.
Back then.
Yeah. We used to have it rain every afternoon. There would be a rain shower. That was up until probably the late 80s, that we used to have a rain shower every afternoon. You could bet about 3 o'clock the clouds would move in, and we'd have a nice rain shower.
And cool it off.
Yeah, it was cool, and it stayed cool.
What about the mosquitoes?
Oh, we always had lots of mosquitoes.
Oh, okay.
that goes with the moisture, I think. So, yeah, we had that.
And do you know much about the 1911 flood?
About the what? I
The
don't know a whole lot
100-year
about
flood?
it. I just have, like I said, I have a picture of the main street of Crestone where they had that flood and heard about it. No, I don't know a whole lot about it.
Were there people in your family that were?
My grandfather was here, yes. He was here. And my mother went to school here in the school building. She was one of the last classes that they had here at the school before they moved them all to Moffett. She and Gladys Sizemore and Henry Lamb and I don't know who else, but I do know those three people were the last. And I believe they were in the 5th grade at that time.
Oh, that was in the, I was showing this to Johnny too, so this would even be before all that. This is like the 29 in 1933.
Oh, yeah.
Because when did the school stop? That must have been in the...
Let me see if I can find Mama.
Was she there back then? I guess so.
She would have been, because Gladys Stewart. Yeah, Margaret Hutchison Riles. Trying to see right there.
Back
Gladys
row.
Stewart. Second row. Second row is William Stewart. Gladys Stewart. That must be Mama right there.
Those are the school groups?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to...
We have one more.
And I remember Ella White being the teacher. Mother talked about her. Mama was in this one in 1929, or whichever one this 1929 is. She was in the back row. Centella Harlan and Betty Keys, Juanita Wright, and Margaret Hutchison Liles. And it's Liles. It's not spelled correctly there.
This one's dated 1933.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Is that,
This
This
one's
is the
1933.
1933 one here
I
too.
wonder if this is a duplicate of one of those. Does
Might
it
be.
look like it?
It does not. Oh, yeah. No, it does. It's
That's
this
this
one.
one, right here.
And if we wanted
Okay.
Jim to be able to look at some of these photos with Sandie, is there...
Yeah, you want to sit him right next to Sandie?
And you just won't be able to see them?
We'll just have him turn him.
Okay.
I can't pull a camera right behind him.
Because Jim, she says she's got pictures of the 1911 flood.
Oh. They're in that envelope?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Lots of, you know. My uncle's in this top one. Billy Hutchison.
So
is
this
in
must be a copy from
this
this.
one. Uh-huh.
Because
Yeah.
it's a little washed out. This actually is
Yeah,
a better
this is
picture.
a better picture of this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and let's see where back row is. How do you tell which ones are which? I think that's Mother right there.
Oh, this is the caption for this picture.
This one is.
Yeah.
Which
You
one's
see
this
this
one?
arrow?
Oh, okay.
This is the caption to that picture.
Okay, and she's in this one too. Back
So
row.
who are you looking at?
Mother, there's Mama.
His mom, her mom,
My mom, Margaret
Hutchinson.
Hutchison Liles.
Oh, okay.
And that's spelled wrong. It's Liles. And then Billy's Hutchison is my uncle. He's in this one.
Oh, you're
He's
looking
in
at
the front
another
row.
one.
Yeah,
Okay.
this one. Yeah, Mama's in these two and Billy's in that one. And
So what have you got in here?
Okay, I'll give you that.
And Jim, every now and then you can hold him up and show him this camera.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, that's a good stuff.
You know, my main complaint is that most photographs don't have a date on them, a year.
No.
So you don't know
some of them
when
don't.
they're from.
Okay, here's a picture of the store that was my grandfather's store.
Oh, and it has still the name, the Pioneer Store
Mm-hmm.
on it.
And here's another one of it's looking down from that one. That one's looking up the street. That one's looking down the street.
So when did Bill Hutchinson have the store? What years?
1915 to 1945.
15 to 45, he had it for 30
He bought it
years.
from his aunt, Sarah Parker, in 1915.
Okay, okay, so she was the first owner,
Mm-hmm.
he was the second.
Yeah. And that was his aunt.
You know, that looks like Bob King's house,
Probably, yeah, let me see.
right there.
Yep, it is. That's Bob King's
The
house.
Bob King house?
The
Yeah,
Bob
the old
King
one.
house,
Oh, yeah.
the old pool hall.
Oh, so the Pioneer was right where the Martinez is? No.
Yeah.
It was on the.
Yeah, the
north
Martinez
corner.
is in here,
Yeah.
you know, Bob's King's house is still there.
Uh-huh.
So we're looking west on Galena here.
Uh-huh.
There's
That
Galena.
one's looking the other direction, I think.
Yeah, yeah, this is an unusual perspective. Almost all the pictures are looking east or northeast.
Well, this one, and I don't know how that one is.
But this is the one
And
that
that's
had
what
the shooting range and the dance hall.
I told the story about my uncle, my two uncles, and about 3 other young boys decided to play cowboys and Indians up at the spillway with 22s and live ammo. And I told my uncle, I said, well, you must not have been a very good shooter because nobody got hurt.
So is this the drugstore? Is that Stainer's drugstore?
I can't tell, it's so old, I don't know.
I think it is,
Okay.
actually, and I think this is Bob King's house right there.
Looking up.
Yeah, it's that one with the false front,
Yeah.
right there.
And this was the inside of the grocery store where my grandfather had it, and that's my grandfather.
Now, I've seen this photo somewhere before. Did you let Gladys use any of these photos for her book?
She may have, my grandmother may have let her use them, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Because she wrote them. She may have used some of those.
So who is the gentleman behind the
That's-
counter?
That's my grandfather, Bill Hutchison,
Bill Senior,
Bill Senior,
WJ.
WJ.
Yeah, okay. I met Billy in 1979.
Let's see what this says on the back. Water in the street on the 3rd of July from a cloudburst looking down the street from our porch.
3rd of July of what year?
Did you
This
say
is-
something about?
This is Burnt Gulch water coming down Galena, it looks like to me.
What?
That's Bob King's house, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Right
And
there?
that's, I would say that, because my grandfather wrote on the back of it, and he said from their porch, so I would assume he was standing at the store.
Oh, he was standing at the store. Okay, so what is this building? What is this
And
building?
that's the entire Galena covered in water?
Looks, yeah,
That's a
I don't know.
long, skinny building
I
with,
don't know.
with like dormers on it.
I have no, I'd see some of those pictures, and by the time I,
Oh, those are separate buildings. I see what's going on.
And when you're done, you're holding this together, camera, right? So we can.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like, to me, this is looking northeast and the water is coming down Galena Street.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's probably Burnt Gulch water,
probably,
not Crestone Creek water.
no, I would say probably burnt gold. Okay, here's your schoolhouse.
Very nice. Snow on the ground?
There's
Wait
the-
a minute, snow on the ground? Okay, no leaves on the trees. That works for me.
That's the front of it.
Okay, how does this different? This has a series of steps. Right now it has a platform and then one step.
Okay.
So this is before they built what's there
Yeah,
now.
before,
This just had a series of steps, but not a very big landing.
And this is just one of the winter scenes in Crestone.
Oh yeah, probably a spring snowstorm. It looks like it's
Okay.
stuck to the pine needles.
Yeah, okay. And this is the house that my grandparents had, that they lived in there down the road.
Does it still look like this today?
No, they've changed it a lot. I have a picture of the inside of that. A taxidermist built that house in, I believe, the picture says 1908, and it had all of his taxidermy things and everything in there. And there was a great, what we call the great room. And they used to have weddings and dances and all kinds of things there. In fact, Edna and Harold Bennett got married at my grandparents' house.
Where is this?
Just down the road here, across from where I live.
Uh-huh.
The
Where,
big house back there in the,
where that lady Diane?
yeah, that
Owns
she
it?
owns it. Mhm.
This looks like a house inside of another house.
This is one kind of from different, just further away. But I have a lot of these.
So the house faces to the
It
east, is that
faces
right?
east,
Faces
yes,
the
uh-huh.
mountains.
Faces east.
Okay,
Okay.
so maybe that was taken from the road.
And I have no idea where this is. I just thought it was very interesting.
Oops. Cottonwood smacked that house. Now, do we recognize any of these buildings?
Why is
What
this
does
a,
it say on the back? It says something on the back.
Picture taken from south. Mr. Baker's house. Is that Baker?
Let me see. Mr. Bahan, I guess. Living stable on east side of house. Livery stable. House in Crestone, Colorado, that a tree fell on. So it said the livery stable is on the east side of the house.
So where was the livery stable?
I don't know. They said that was taken from the south. So
Mr. Baker says taken from the south, so it's looking north. Livery stable on east side of house. Livery stable, that's this building. I thought the livery stable was on Golden Avenue. But boy, I don't recognize this house.
they probably tore it down after the tree crushed it.
Yeah, it only hit that one corner though. The rest of the house looks okay.
this is probably in the 1930s.
That is a Model T, isn't it? Oh, about 1914 this says Hutchinson's possessive.
Yeah.
So is that Hutchinson's vehicle?
Probably was my grandfather's vehicle.
WJ's vehicle, huh? That would be him driving. Are there two people in there?
I don't.
Yeah, I think there's a second person in that vehicle.
And they used to have some. Adam asked me what they did for recreation. All the little towns used to have baseball teams, and my grandfather was a great baseball player. And here's a picture of their baseball.
Well, you
team.
know, somebody donated us some baseball shoes. They have the big old-fashioned cleats on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we got them from Jack Harlan's sheds in the back.
Very possibly did. That's got on the names. It's got the names on the back of it of all the people that were playing there.
For what team? Did Crestone have a team?
I don't know whether they did or not. I just remember taking my grandfather up to Villa Grove to play baseball. And I remember him putting his uniform on in the back seat of the car, and he told me I couldn't look.
So
That would
I
have
think
been
Jim
in the 40s.
Homer told me that Bill Hutchinson played semi-pro baseball.
He did. In fact, he was going to go to California and play pro baseball, and then he bought the store and married my grandmother instead. In fact, I have an article about him talking about that.
So would this Hutchinson be your grandpa?
Mm-hmm.
On the second to last one there.
Yeah, yeah. He's the tallest one in the line too.
He was tall and thin. He was quite a character. And I had a lady tell me in church one day, she said, "You know, your grandfather was quite a dancer." I was going, "Oh, okay."
Did he ever tell you what position he played on the baseball team?
No, I don't know.
Usually they like the tall guys to be first baseman.
But he loved baseball up until the day he died. If there was a baseball game on, he watched it. And that's him. I don't know what, let's see what it says. It just says W.J. Hudson and Russell Kenny. I don't know who Russell Kenny is.
Well, is one of the names on there Kenny? Kenny?
No.
Oh. Okay. Maybe that's him. Maybe that's Kenny, and that's WJ.
And I have not, this is Fritz in his cutter. I have no idea who Fritz is.
Fritz. If he's from Crestone, is that where this is? I don't see any mountains, so I can't tell where
I don't
this
either.
is.
I just know that's my grandfather's handwriting, so, oh.
How did these get turned into postcards?
I have no idea. I do have other postcards. I have a lot of postcards I've taken, like going up the spillway up in that area, that are postcards. How they did it, I don't know.
I think you would send the film in to get developed, and one of the options, besides a 3x5 print or whatever, was a postcard. And the people that developed the film would print those for you.
Here's the sleigh pit.
Yes, I've seen this. Where? This isn't a book, and I couldn't figure out if that was in this mining district.
Yes,
So the shale pit.
the shale pit.
What would people call shale here? There's no shale here.
But I thought that was taken like going up the mountain
From Crestone or down in the Baca?
from here, up here.
Up here, so
I
where
don't
would
know.
that be?
I mean, those burnt gulch ones, and the one over by the quartz mine.
Shale. How strange.
I don't know. Anyway,
Okay.
here's the railroad coming in.
Oh, yeah. And there's a bend in the rails out here. You can tell it's curving to the right. I bet we could find where this is based on that curve, because we have the maps,
Okay.
the maps from the railroad company showing
Okay.
exactly where the tracks were.
How many years was that operational?
Well, from 1901 to, the thing is, they stopped the operation. First they ran every day of the week. Then they ran 3 days a week. Then they got rid of the passengers. Then they ran 1 day a week for passengers. Then they got rid of the passenger service, but just ran freight. And then eventually they stopped the freight. So that took like 20 years.
Yeah, and I know my grandmother told about, I know she rode the train to Denver, and she had my Uncle Bill with her, and he was little, and he saw the first black man that he'd ever seen. And he said, "Mom, he needs to wash his hands and face."
Billy Hutchinson hits the big city, huh?
Yeah. Speaking of your maps, you have a map of Crestone.
Oh, I have never seen one of these before. This is an original plat by E.F. Mitchell Engineer, 1898. Tracing by J.D. Bootwell Draftsman, 1967. So this is a 1967 tracing of an 1898 map. Oh. Lots with heavy outliner for sale by the Arizona Land and Cattle Company. Boy, that was Maurice Strong's company.
Mm-hmm.
They owned all these lots with the heavy outlines.
My lot's not even on here.
Yeah, there's nothing south of Galena.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, you're right there.
Mhm.
This was a later addition to the town.
Oh,
And I have some older ones at home. Does the museum, are you Jim?
Yes, I'm Jim.
Does the museum want these?
The museum would die and go to heaven for these.
Okay. Because I have no place to leave them to.
Well, we will put
Some
them
of these things I should have
in that
already
archive cabinet right there, and we'll catalog them in, and we'll
Okay.
keep them forever.
Okay, that's just some of the cowboys. And I have no idea who they are or where they are. They're just some of the old
Could be
cowboys.
a Manchego.
Yeah.
Oh, branding time, or worse.
Yeah. And that's my Uncle Bill. He was quite the cowboy. In fact, he used to be a champion calf roper.
Yes, I remember in 1979, I was driving from Dimmick Gulch on that Jeep road back to North Crestone, and I cut across the corner of his land. He had a stock tank there with a pipe coming down the mountains. And as I was opening the gate to come through that, he rode up on a horse and he said, "What do you think you're doing?"
Sounds like my uncle.
Yeah, I was
One of
scared
the-
to death.
He used to take his cows up to Dimmitt every year. And one of the last times he ever went up there, I was here with it. I had moved back here, and he wanted me to take him up because he couldn't ride the horse anymore. He had oxygen, he couldn't ride the horse.
Okay.
And I had a Jeep. So I said, okay. So we piled in the Jeep. Now, I had never four-wheeled in my life in this Jeep. And we're going up,
Who was driving?
me.
Oh,
He wouldn't drive. He says, you drive. And he took me over some places, and I'm going, I can't do this. And he said, yes, you can. You can. Well, we didn't get back until it was almost dark, and I couldn't find the lights on the Jeep. And we came home in the dark. My aunt was having a fit. I was about to have a heart attack. I thought if something happens to my uncle, I'm going to get killed. That was quite a ride. I said, we're not going to do that again.
if you haven't been back there lately, huh?
No, The last time we started to go up there, we were met by some people that weren't really nice, and they gave us dirty looks and said, you don't want to go here. And we said, okay, and left.
The last time you headed to Dimmick?
Yeah.
Oh wait, so the pipe coming down from Dimmick was from Billy Hutchinson?
It was from a spring
Uh-huh.
that came out of the Sangre de Cristo fault.
Yeah.
Somebody had dug a tunnel back into the fault zone, and the tunnel was full of water, and he had run this black pipe up there, a black plastic
Yeah,
pipe,
it's still there.
and it goes all the way down to that stock tank in the northeast corner of his land.
What was his land?
It was an inholding surrounded by BLM land.
Did he work at the ranch?
Oh, yes.
Was he the foreman?
He was the head herdsman for the show cattle. I've got all kinds of information.
Show cattle.
That's
Was
like
that
the
the purebred?
The
$70,000
purebred,
bull.
what they call the purebred, huh?
Sean Homer said there was a bull that sold for like
I've
$70,000.
got the
Yeah.
information right here.
Wow.
The purebreds.
Yes. Okay, this is Bob Sizemore.
Okay.
And this is Bill Stewart, and I don't know if you've heard anything about Bill Stewart.
I've heard the name,
Okay.
but I don't really know.
Well, that was
much
Gladys
about it.
Sizemore's father.
Is he the one that got shot to death?
No, I don't think so. I don't remember him getting shot. I don't remember when he died. I just remember.
Bill
Bob,
when
so
I was-
Bill was his brother. Bill Sizemore. This is Bob.
No,
Bill
this,
Stewart.
that's.
Oh, this is a Stewart.
Gladys
Bill
Sizemore's-
Stewart.
it was-
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Gladys was his daughter, and she married Sizemore. She
Gladys's
married.
father. Okay.
Okay,
I knew she was a Stewart.
yeah. Well, that's her dad.
Okay.
And what I remember about him is he was the jack of all trades. And when they brought electricity into Crestone, he's the one that did most of the wiring to do the electricity. And he could just do anything. Didn't have any teeth. He gummed everything. And I remember that as growing up, always him gumming everything.
Yeah, his
He
mouth
didn't-
is closed
Yeah,
at
he didn't
this
have any
point.
teeth. And I loved him dearly. He made me a cradle when I was little.
Okay.
And I have that cradle that he made me, and he made me a swing for my grandparents' house, and so he was quite the.
And he was able to make a living being a jack of all
I
trades.
guess he
right?
did, yeah. And he
Wow.
did some mining. He and my granddad were always talking about mining, and I'm sure he did some mining too. So, but yeah, but that was Gladys Sizemore's dad. And then what I have this is some pictures. This is my my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary, and that's Bill and Pearl and Bill Sr., Margaret and Ken. And Bill and Ken were born here in Crestone. Mama was born in Salida.
There was two Pearls. It's not Pearl Henderson, is it?
No, that's Pearl Hutchison.
Yeah. WC and WJ.
Yep. William Johnson and William Charles. And it may be Chafee, because my great-grandmother was
Right.
Chafee. This is Bill and Lee Hutchison.
He doesn't look so scary here. Of course, he's not on a horse.
He wasn't scary at all. After I had come back, it was probably 1989 or 1990, my brother came up with his daughter, who was about 10 years old, and we were out with the cattle. And she came out, and she asked him, she said, "Uncle Bill, what do you do with these cattle?" And he said, "You know that hamburger meat you eat?" And she says, "But they're so innocent."
And they taste so good.
Yeah, he raised breeding stock. In his Herefords were breeders. He was known all over for his breeders.
So
And
he knew Alfred Collins pretty well.
he worked for Alfred Collins.
Sure.
He stayed with Alfred Collins to sell the biggest sale that they ever had, which I have all the information on. And
Was that the final sale?
when Mr. Collins was dying of cancer. And then he worked for Harry Glenn, who was Mr. Collins' stepson.
Okay.
In fact, the house where I lived belonged to the Glens.
Ah, that's who Harry Glenn was.
Yeah.
And
That
that's
was-
Eula's brother?
No, Eula's husband
Eula's husband.
was Harry Glenn. And my uncle took care of, after Harry died, he asked my uncle would he take care of Eula, his wife, and he left him that property and the house that we live in and the 40 acres that go up to where you go into the Baca. So he took care of her till she died. And this is Charlie and Florence Parker, Charlie the Second. And that was my grandfather's uncle. My grandfather's cousin.
So I just met his son and wife when they were here to sell the house.
Okay. Yeah.
And he, of course, graduated from the Colorado School of Mines in 1952 or 3.
Yeah. And so did my uncle, and so did my dad.
Wait, everybody left here and went up to college?
Yeah, my grandmother went up with my uncle, and she ran a boarding house while he was going to college there at the Colorado School of Mines. And that's where my mother met my dad, at the Colorado School of Mines. So that was,
Was she a student?
yeah, she was in high school. She graduated from high school at Golden.
Oh, okay, because back in those days, there were hardly any women students at the School of Mines.
No, she wasn't a student at the School of
Okay,
Mines. She was
okay.
a student there. Okay.
What did they all study?
Well, my uncle was, and my dad were both mining engineers.
Yeah.
And so was Charlie.
It's just like a mining university.
It's more, now it's engineering and everything, but it used to be.
Right.
This is the picture. I said, this was the day after Thanksgiving, and that's going, the main drag out there, that's my mom. And she said it snowed that day, the day after Thanksgiving, and it stayed that way. And that's when they iced down the hill and bobsledded until, and that was in 1932.
In 1997, there was a Thanksgiving snowstorm, kind of like this.
Yeah, I remember it because I was living at the big house. And it took me all day to shovel out, just to get out the door.
So there have been two big Thanksgiving snowstorms.
Mm-hmm.
Does it say 1932 on it anywhere?
No, I just know because, well, my mom was born in 23 and she said she was 9 years old, so that would have been probably
Okay.
Thanksgiving of
Right, 32.
32. Yeah. And these are just, when we talked about the Baca,
Oh, that's the cow book.
I have that one.
This will have those $1 million cows on it.
Well, no, I have the sale catalog from that. And this is, well, and I don't know if you have any one of this, but this is the Saguache County. I don't know how old that one is.
Ooh. Give us a hint here.
So these guys all worked for Alfred?
Mhm.
And I mean, here it says the boys who have done the job, they must have been real proud
Oh, yeah.
to work there.
My uncle was very proud to work for Alfred Collins. He was a very good employer to work for.
So evidently they had two herds. They had the commercial herd and the purebred
This-
herd.
Okay,
And
I've got
I'll
two
bet
more.
the purebreds were worth the most money, so
Oh,
the
yeah.
best cowboys worked on the purebreds.
My uncle was the head herdsman
Yeah,
for the
see,
purebred.
there was a pecking order there.
And this one tells about the start of the ranch and all the property and everything they had. But all of these are Baca books. And this is just about,
Yeah, this is more cows, and this is more cows.
these are just pictures of more cows and
Alfred Collins was proud of his cows.
this was 1942. My grandfather wrote that on there. That was obviously at the ranch. And this is when they converted it to the,
Okay, but this has three names. It has Alfred Collins and then Ralph Murdoch and Walter Oldland. Like they're listed in the same, like they're
yeah, they were all
co-owners?
co-owners,
Oh,
I think,
I-
to start with. And it tells about, in one of these books, it'll tell you the whole history of
Okay, okay.
Baca Grant and what happened.
1942. Oh, it's down here also.
Okay.
Well, these are priceless.
Yeah, that's just more pictures of the grant that my grandfather never threw anything away.
A man after my own heart.
I have a butter churn, the ones that have the jar and the handle, crank handle. Inside it is the information that my grandfather bought it and how much he paid for it and when he bought it. What?
Must not have used it for butter.
Oh yeah, he used it, he just kept all that stuff. And this is one of the brochures when they started selling the Baca.
Oh, right. I have not seen this one before. This would be like 1971, 72, something like that. They did a lot of this. Oh, 1976. Wow. I really like it when they do that, because then you can figure out where this is in the overall chronology of things. Yeah, it says
Okay.
August of 76 down here.
This is hilarious.
Right.
That is just some kids, and there's names on the back. My Uncle Ken is the first one. He did, whoever wrote that didn't know all the people on it, so
Oh, right.
somebody might be able to tell
He's
you.
got two Tookers, but no first names. Oh,
But Charlie Stewart's on the end, and on one end, and my uncle's on the other, Ken.
oh, bottom row is listed first. So top row, so this is Charlie Stewart right there.
Okay.
And Ken Hutchinson is the first person on the bottom row.
That's
Probably
him.
that,
Yep.
yeah,
And he
okay.
still looked like that, except he was bald-headed.
Boy, this looks like a rough crew here. It's like a bunch of pirates. These hats were popular in the 1920s. Those little,
Yeah, let's
what
see.
do they call those things? The flappers wore
Yeah,
these.
a cloche is something.
Yeah, cloche or something.
Yeah.
Huh, I wonder if this is from the late 1920s. We can figure it out. How old is Charlie Stewart in that picture?
Well, that's Ken. Ken Hutchison.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know.
Or Ken or Charlie, if we could guess how old they were, we know when they were born. We could figure out
Yeah,
when this photo was taken.
Ken was born in, let's see, Mama was born in 23, and he's 5 years older than she was. So he was born in 1918?
Okay.
Yeah, 1918. He was born in 1918,
He's no more than 10 years old there.
so,
So that'd be
probably
1928,
Yeah,
late
28.
20s, which is what we thought from the hats.
yeah.
Okay.
And I have no, this was something that my grandfather had, but I thought it was interesting because it's talking about Ebenezer Farm here in Crestone. Never heard of it.
I have heard of it, but where?
Ebenezer Farm?
Yes, yes. I never saw a map indicating where it was.
I don't know. I found that and I thought it was interesting.
And it wouldn't be part of the Vaca grant,
No.
and it wouldn't be within the city limits of Crestone, so that narrows down where it wasn't.
Yeah.
I'd have to look. We have now 4 file cabinets full of documents like this, plus the bigger documents that are too big to fit in the file cabinet are in that cabinet. So I've got an inventory somewhere where I could look up Ebenezer where I read about
All
it.
right.
Miss Rose B. Heiter, secretary. Oh, this is a religious thing because the owner is Reverend somebody, the director.
Okay.
So Ebenezer, yeah, it's a religious name.
Okay. And then I just have some clippings. This is all the information on Mr. Collins when he died and all that information.
1951.
Yeah, here's more.
Did he
Here's the
own
world record price paid for a bill, $87,500.
Did Alfred own the ranch when he died?
Yeah.
Yes.
He sold it right before he died, and my uncle, he asked my uncle if he would stay with him until they sold the purebred herd. And my uncle went with him to Loveland and stayed with him until they sold the purebred herd.
And then did he keep cowboying or was
Yeah, then he worked for Harry Glenn and he still cowboyed. He had cows. That was one of the things when I came back in '89, I came back to help him because he had no children and he had COPD. Most of the old cowboys died from COPD,
from the dust?
from the dust and the cattle feed and that type of thing. He was one of the last ones that was alive, and he said most of the old cowboys died from COPD. Of course, they all smoked too, but
Right.
my uncle hadn't smoked for years. But anyway, so when I came back in '89 to help him, and he wasn't too fond of having a woman work with him. And so we were out, one day we were out because he still had some calves and raised, like I said, he raised purebred Herefords. And we were tagging the calves and we were gonna, there was one, if they weren't bull quality, he castrated them and sold them for meat.
Steers.
For steers. So we were out there and he had one calf that we didn't turn loose when we got through with the others. And I said, Uncle Bill, why aren't we letting that calf go back with his mother? And he kind of ignored me. So I asked him again. And I said, Uncle Bill, what are we gonna do? Why aren't we letting this calf go back to its mother? And I already knew what the answer was. And he said, oh, we're gonna alter him. I said, do you mean we're gonna castrate him? He said, I didn't know if you knew what that meant. And I said, well, Uncle Bill, I know you're not happy having a woman help you, but I'm all you've got. So you either use me or don't. So the next time you need a calf pulled, Sandie, we gotta come pull a calf, okay? Let the whole go. I'd get on the horse and go out and get the cattle and bring them in. And he had one bull that he kept until after he died. My aunt sold it. It was a huge bull. And he said, told me one day, he said, we're gonna ear tag this bull. I said, okay. So he halter broke all of his bulls.
Okay.
You could actually put a halter on them and guide them around. And here's this huge bull, my uncle with his oxygen on his back and could hardly get around. And we put the halter on him and we tied him up to the fence, and then he had me take a rope and tie it around behind him. And he said, now, Sandie, watch his horns. He wouldn't mean to hurt you. And I said, Uncle Bill, I have a good respect for that bull's horns. And I'm tying him up to the fence, and I'm thinking, if this bull decides to go any place, the whole thing's going with him.
He'll drag the fence with him.
But I was worried about my uncle because he was going to go up and ear tag this bull. And I'm holding my breath, and he walked up, and that old bull never moved. My uncle ear tagged him and everything else, and that bull never moved the whole time he did that. But I was scared to death because I could just see that bull tossing his head and my uncle going flying.
But he had raised that bull from a calf,
He raised him,
so.
and yeah. he had a bull out on the Baca when he was working out there that was worth quite a bit of money, and somebody castrated his bull.
Somebody.
They never did find out who castrated his bull. Yeah, he was about a $50,000 bull.
What did Alfred think about that?
Well, it caused quite a commotion. But anyway, and this is just one of the, there's a picture of him with one of the bulls.
Do you think that Ebenezer was the first spiritual center in Preston?
Well, it would be. It would be. But I don't think it lasted because.
It must not have, because I
I-
don't ever remember
Yeah,
hearing of it.
Yeah, I don't either. Prince Domino. Ooh, which bought the bull? Mrs. Alfred Collins, Billy Hutchinson, and Mitchell Muniz. Oh, so Alfred had died by this time. Because it says Mrs. Alfred Collins, whose late husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this must have been the sale of the Baca after Mr. Collins, when he sold it.
And he sold it to Newhall Land and Farming. Well, he sold it before he died.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay.
that's why, like I said, they took the purebred Herefords and took them up to Loveland until they could have the sale. But he sold the ranch before he died.
So, I've been learning or hearing a lot about Alfred Collins, and it's like people walk in and they either have great things to say or difficult things to say. And it sounds like your experience was great. Did you hear? people
You know,
that
like I
had
said,
difficult-
they were friends with in fact, my grandmother and Mrs. Collins helped establish the little Episcopal church that was here in Crestone. And so I never heard anything detrimental about the Collinses because, like I said, my uncle worked for them and they were always close.
Did you hear about what she would do at Christmas time?
Vaguely.
She would go to Alamosa and buy gifts for all the kids, and wrap them and put them under the
Yeah,
tree.
she was very good as far as that's concerned. This is just record San Luis Valley feeder scale scores, and that's that.
Is it fair to say that Alfred and his prize bulls were kind of world famous or
Oh, yes,
nationwide famous?
they were,
Can you lead in and just tell us that they were famous all around?
Well, in some of these articles, it talks about it, and like I said, I do have the catalog, the sale catalog, where they sold the purebred Herefords with the prices that those brought. And the last I heard, no bull had ever bought the top price that the Hereford bull bought at that sale, which was, what did we say, it was
$87,500.
$87,500.
And is part of that because they were bred in such
They
a
were
austere
special
environment,
bred.
high altitude, dry
Yeah.
climate, they're strong.
And that talks about that in these books from the Balca, how where they got the breeder, the first bull that they had and the ones that they bred, and they brought top prices. They were world known for their Hereford bulls.
This article says in 1949 that he was named Man of the Year in Livestock by the Record Stockman.
So back in the 50s, like, you talked about the afternoon rainstorms, I mean, you've been here at different points throughout the
Yeah,
valley.
I've been here different permits.
How was, I think Elaine told us that at some point there were geysers that were.
Oh, they were artesian wells all over this valley. Yes, in fact, my uncle had one out, you know where Pam Grip's property is? Pam Grip out County Road, the one that goes to Henry Lamb's place.
65
Yeah,
maybe?
something like that. That, on that corner, he owned that property, and there was an artesian well on that. And a lot of those wells have dried up because they've pumped the water out of the valley.
Like they were such pressure, they'd come out.
Yes.
They
uh-huh.
come
In
out
fact, there was
10,
one,
10, 12 feet in the
yeah,
air.
there was one going down toward Alamosa that, and this was even back in, when I was here in '89, in the wintertime, it would have an ice flow as tall as this building. But they were all over the valley, and most of them have dried up. But there were artesian wells all over. In fact, most of the wells here in Crestone were hand-dug wells because the water table was so low. I have one at my house that it's only 18 feet deep. It was a hand-dug well. And the only time it runs now is if we get a good spring and Burnt Gulch runs, then that well will fill up.
Oh.
So back in these days, farming in Northern Valley wasn't like it was, none of the circle pivots, I mean,
No, in fact, my Aunt Lee talked about, because she grew up in Hooper, and she said that area was all wheat farms. It was all sub-irrigated by wheat. And they even had a flour mill in Hooper, and her dad worked at that flour mill. And the railroad, they'd load the flour on the railroad and take it out. But she said that, they literally dried up the fields because they've pumped the water out. But that was all wheat fields. And there's pictures in here, you can see the grass, how tall the grass was out in the valley.
So when did electricity come to the valley?
In the 1950s, it came here to Crestone in the 50s.
You think maybe it got to Alamosa before that?
I'm sure it did. In fact, one of the articles that I have, this is from the San Luis Valley Rural Electric Corporation, and it talked about my grandfather helping them get the electricity here. And it was after the war, so I'm sure they had it in Alamosa before the war,
Okay.
but it didn't come up here to Crestone until, like I said, in the 1950s. So there's that article.
Oh, I think I've seen this before.
Do you have grandkids?
Do I have grandchildren?
Mhm.
Yes.
Mm.
They've never been to Crestone.
They've never been to Preston?
No. I have 2 grandchildren back east, and they've never seen the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, man.
I think it's terrible, but their dad didn't want them to come out here, so. Yeah, they think the mountains are what they have in New York. When I went back east, and my daughter said, we're going through the Cascades, and I said, where's the mountains? She said, Mom, you're in them. I said, no, these aren't mountains. These are hills. I said, they don't know what a mountain is back here.
Well, I was gonna ask what your favorite thing to share with your grandkids is, but what would you like to share with your grandkids about here?
Well, I would like to share all the history, because like I said, when I was little, it's just like the apple trees that we have in our orchard. Those were trucked in here on a wagon, and they're about 100 years old. And they're still, some of them are still bearing. Mine are starting to die out, but I still get apples on them, and they're good apples, those kind of things. The story went that my great-grandmother made great apple jack. I don't know whether she did or not. I heard that
Well,
story.
between 1918 and 1933, that would be good.
Yeah, I'm sure she did, because she had the apple press, and
What's Applejack?
well, it's apple juice that's been allowed to ferment,
Okay.
so it's got an alcohol content to
And
it.
then if you distill it, it becomes like whiskey, like White
Yeah.
Lightning.
Yeah,
Oh, that sounds really good.
but they usually just let it naturally ferment, and then it's applejack. Yeah.
Off of those trees?
So that would be hard cider, the way they
Yeah.
say it
Yeah,
now.
they call it now hard cider. Yeah.
And you think those trees won't last much longer?
No, mine are dying. They're still, we keep trimming them, and a little bit of them dies back every year.
Are they yellow apples?
They're small. They're only about this big around, and they have a really good flavor. In fact, Harold, the physical therapist, he's from Germany,
Yeah.
and he loves those apples. He said this is what apples are supposed to taste like. And so they're the old, they make wonderful pies, they make good jelly, but you can also eat them. They're not as sweet as the apples that they make nowadays, but they're good, crisp eating apples. They're just not very big, but yeah.
Saving the seeds?
Hmm?
Are you gonna save the seeds?
I'm
Can
sorry.
you save the seeds and give them around people?
Well, I haven't, but I'm sure I could. I don't know if they've never been
They might be viable seeds to start a new tree from because they're probably not grafted
No,
onto
they're
some
not.
strange rootstock. They're 100 years old.
Yeah, they're the original
Yeah.
apples. But yeah, somebody wanted seeds, I mean, wasn't happy to give them to them.
Okay.
So how about before electricity? There was an era where it was just wood, there was an era where it was kerosene. How did you heat, how did you keep things cool?
Oh, well, my grandfather had an ice house, and he would go out in the wintertime, and I can remember them taking the wagon and cutting the ice on the creek, cutting the ice blocks out and bringing them and putting them in the ice house with the sawdust. And we had ice like that. And a lot of people, and even my mom, when she had her house here, they would put like a metal box in the creek, and they would put their milk and their cold stuff in the creek and keep it cold that way. So we did that. Yeah, my grandmother cooked on a wood stove, and man, she could cook. And when they got electricity, my uncle bought her an electric stove, and she said, "Don't get rid of my wood stove." But she learned to cook on the electric stove, but she really didn't like it. She liked her wood stove. She could bake everything. I tell you, she was a fantastic cook.
Now tomorrow we're going to bake cookies in the wood stove in the kitchen.
Okay,
We've got it working again.
okay. Yeah, she cooked cakes and everything. In fact, she was quite famous for her cake decorating, and she sold cakes all over the valley.
So as far as interior lighting, up until the 50s, you were using kerosene.
We used kerosene. We had kerosene light. I can remember the kerosene lights along the wall in the house, the gas lights. And we did have a stove that it was run by kerosene. When I was little, we had the kerosene stove. So yeah, we had kerosene. And wood in the old outhouse. When I was little, man, that was, and my grandfather wouldn't let him take the outhouse down after we got bathroom. He said, "Nope, we might need it someday." And when we had that big storm that you were talking about, the snow after Thanksgiving, my sewer froze up and I used that outhouse. I was glad to have it.
Was it
He was right.
was it a two-seater or one-seater?
Two-seater,
All right. Yeah, I heard about that.
yeah.
People go out and use the outhouse and hang out next to each other.
Well, we didn't hang out very long. In the wintertime, it was a little cold out
Right.
there. You got in and out as fast as you could.
At least it wasn't a 2-story outhouse.
Yeah.
Those are the worst.
No, it was just a single one. So,
And so you're still raising chickens,
oh yeah, we've got chickens and
Garden.
alpacas and garden
llamas,
and llama,
apple trees.
apple trees, and choke cherries. Make fantastic choke cherry jelly.
Cherries.
Do you know what that is?
I don't. I know
my
what
goodness,
the
they-
currant bushes are, but they're native here.
The choke cherries. are
Choke
nice.
cherries, are they also native?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
got them all over my property.
And what
yeah.
do they make? Jam?
Oh, we make wonderful jelly. Yeah,
Wine.
Oh,
yeah. You can make choke cherry wine out of them too.
when you were canning and making jams, did you have to use paraffin somehow to seal?
My grandmother used paraffin.
But they don't, the jams that you buy now don't have any paraffin in them.
No, but they didn't have that paraffin actually sealed, and I can remember watching my grandmother when she made jelly, and then she'd seal it with a paraffin, and that literally sealed all of the air out of it. Now you use the lids have the pressure seal around it and
Right.
everything. So
Oh,
they
but
don't-
those didn't exist?
No,
Oh.
they didn't have those.
I thought they'd existed for a long time.
Well, they probably have existed for quite a while, but like I said, back then I still remember my grandmother using paraffin on the jelly jars.
Somebody donated to us a big block of paraffin from the old days, and I said, "What is this?" And they said, "You needed this to seal the jams."
Yeah, they used it on sealing up the jams.
Okay.
Did your uncle talk about his feelings about the Baca developing?
Well, no, none of the old timers were happy with that. They didn't, like I said, my grandparents would have rolled over in their grave. They'd seen what was going on here. In fact, I did an interview several years ago and the lady asked me what I thought about the development, and I told her, never saw the interview again. So, yeah. And I guess my feelings are You know, it was a little sleepy village, and people came here, and it was kind of pristine, and now it's not so pristine anymore. People leave trash along, you know, because we would sled down the creek in the wintertime, and there was never any trash or anything around there. People kept it clean, and I'm disappointed that they don't keep it that way anymore. It's more, they don't care about it as much, I guess. But yeah, I loved that. Loved coming here. I've always, and my mom always wanted to come back. You know, she married a Texan, and she always wanted to come back, and he never liked Colorado. I can't imagine why not, but
It's unbelievable.
I agree totally with you. But yeah, she wanted to come back, and she came back. She was here 10 days. She came back, and she was here 10 days and had a massive stroke. But she got to spend her last 10 days here in Crestone.
Is she buried here or in Texas?
No, she's buried in Texas. They insisted, she didn't want to be buried in Texas, but my brothers insisted that she be buried next to her husband in Texas. But her spirit's here in Colorado. She loved Crestone. And I heard them, you know, talk about riding horses up to the lake up in North Crestone, and they would go up there for picnics. And
Did you ever ride up there?
I didn't. I always wanted to, and I never could find anybody that would go up with me. So I didn't get to go. Now I'm too old to
Well,
climb
not too
on
many
that horse.
horses left in Crestone either.
No,
That's
no.
one of the problems.
Yeah.
Any classic ghost stories?
No, I never heard any ghost stories. You know, I heard my uncle and my grandfather and Bill Stewart talking about the mining around. They said there was a gold mine up here in the mountains, and they knew where it was, but it was on the Baca property, and they couldn't get to it. But if they could figure out a way to get to it, they'd be rich. You know, I remember hearing that when I was little, talking about the gold. They were always going to get rich.
Gives us some hope for the future.
There may still be gold up there. I don't know.
Well, it hasn't gone anywhere, that's
No.
for sure.
But yeah, at that time, the Baca owned, you know, all the land, and you couldn't go across it. They couldn't figure out how to get it out. So I don't know whether the mine where it was died with them, or whether they just were talking or what. But yeah, I heard
And
those
when
stories.
you say the Baca, do you mean the
ranch,
ranch or the
Yeah.
the subdivision?
the ranch at that time owned. They even owned what we always called Crestone Peak, which is Kit Carson now, I guess. But it was always Crestone Peak to us.
They owned all the way
They
up
owned
there?
it, and it tells about in one of these books how much property that they owned. So,
Have to go.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Kit Carson Peak was always in the ranch. Privately owned 14er.
Did they sell it to the national?
Yeah,
market?
well, when the feds bought the ranch in 2004, that part of it was given to the Rio Grande National
So it
Forest.
was private property until
Yes.
2004?
That is correct. They could have built a gondola from Crestone to the top of Kit Carson Mountain, and they wouldn't have needed permission from anybody, because
I
it was
wish.
their land. So they never did it, but
But
they
they
could
had
have.
control of it. And you weren't allowed to go on the Baca unless you had permission. When I was growing up, it
Yes.
was a no-no to go on the Baca land unless you had permission to do so.
And then, so if you said you came back in 1989? And were you comfortable right when you came back, or were you like, oh, this place has changed a lot, or?
Well, it's changed a lot, but I still, where we had our property, that was still, it was like it was, you know. So I was at home in my mother's property. That was still the same. It hadn't changed.
where did you come from in '89 to get here
From California.
from California?
Yeah.
So compared to how much California changes every year, this place probably looked like it was frozen in time.
Yeah, it hadn't changed. Like I said, there was a lot more people, and you know, when I was little, they didn't have the White Eagle or any of that. And I can remember going where Valley View, where the hot springs are, there used to be a swimming pool there, and I went swimming there as a kid with the snow coming, the building was starting to fall down, and the roof had gone, and there was snow coming down through the cracks, and I went swimming in it.
Oh, the pool was inside a building?
It was at that time.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Did you have to pay to get in?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We paid to get in, but, and I was probably 10 or 11 years old at that time. I think that's the last time. And then the next time we came back, they had closed it because they couldn't support it with what they were doing, so they closed it.
And as Crestone continues to grow and change, whether it's slow or fast, do you have hopes or direction you'd like to see that
Well,
happen?
I think one of the things I see so much, the people come in from the more populated areas, and they want to bring all of their more populated area ideas with them, which I'm sad because it just ruins the whole area when you do that. It wasn't ever meant to be a metropolis. And that was one of the things of coming back here is, the people that summered here, okay, it was nice and quiet, and you could, kids could roam and play, and you didn't have any problems with that. And I've never had any problems with the people since I've been back, and I know quite a few of them. But I know that, they wanted, one of the things they started, they wanted my property to put a youth center on. And I said, it's my property, I'm not giving it away. That's the only time I ever wrote an article for the newspaper. And I wrote an article that time.
When was that?
Oh, it's been several years ago. I can't even remember when. I saw it in the paper where they just knew that we should give that property to them. And I proceeded to write a letter and tell them, no, you don't get my property.
Is that the property that
We have now.
they got, so it's not the charter school gifted property?
No, that was Filio property.
No, but
No, it wasn't.
part of, I'm talking on the west side,
It was
behind
part,
the kiosk.
that whole
was part of
40
her
acres
40.
belonged to my aunt and uncle. And when my aunt died in, let's see, 96, in 2000, I think, she died in 99. She gave Joanne Boyce 25 acres of that property up
Okay.
to where the Baca is.
Which
and
is where
then
the
us-
llamas are?
Well, no, the llamas are on my property, and then I've got 15 acres.
Okay.
And it goes back to, I don't know how far back it goes. And then Joanne and Gary sold that property to whoever bought it and gave it to the charter school.
Which I believe is Gayatri. So there's
I thought
25,
the Filio land was involved.
No,
in
he
that.
wanted it, but never got, he came and told my auntie that she couldn't stop progress, and she said, hide and watch.
that land's to the east.
Okay.
All the land to the east. There was 40 acres there. And that was Baca property. Tells about it in the book.
Well, it looks like half the town is Baca.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the whole southeast quarter of town wasn't
fact-
part of the town originally.
There was, and I have a picture of the building that they had, it was part of the Baca, and it may be in one of those books too, and it burned.
Oh, the
My grand-
bungalow.
Yeah, And some of the bricks from that burning are still, we found them when we were working out in the backyard.
And
Oh.
you say you would appreciate if people didn't bring their big city needs to the small town.
Right.
Do you think there's anything that the community needs or could help the community that they don't have?
Well, gee whiz, I've lived here for a long, long time, and I've got everything I need. I'm sure that there are things that would improve life for the people here. Of course, I'm older, so, I don't have young children, but for me, as far as growing up, you need to be able to get out on the land and plant a garden and harvest the apples and learn to do those things. So many of the younger generation thinks milk comes in a carton and eggs come in a carton, and they really don't understand.
Well, eggs do come in cartons that you bring to the charter school
That's true.
and we buy and bring home.
That's true. but they didn't come out of they didn't grow in the carton.